It's part of our comprehensive radio and internet employment campaign designed to get your job openings noticed. For details, just reach out to your account manager. Put the power of radio and the internet to work for you at IllinoisJobPost.com.
WTIM. This is the WTIM morning show on your information station. The show is sponsored by People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first, and Landmark of Taylorville. I'm your host, Reed Kamai, and my next guest this morning comes from the Social Security Administration. He is Jack Myers, the Public Affairs Specialist. Jack, thanks for coming on this morning.
My pleasure, Reed. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, it is always good to talk to you on the show. Let's get right into it. We're looking today at Social Security survivors benefits. Give me a little bit of an understanding of what these are and how someone is able to take advantage of them.
Yeah, something definitely is important to talk about so people are aware of these benefits. Reed, one of the things that I spend some time on these interviews talking about is our website, ssa.gov, and I talk about the My Social Security account, and they encourage people to set up that account. And, one of the things that you can find in that account is what your family members would qualify for in survivor benefits if you pass away. Because when a person dies, certain members of their family may be eligible for monthly survivor benefits, and those are going to be payable if the deceased worker worked and paid into Social Security long enough to earn that eligibility for their survivors. So you might wonder, well, who would qualify for these monthly survivor benefits? And, typically the most common would be a surviving spouse or children. So for the surviving spouse side of this, it's going to be somebody who is 60 or older, or potentially 50 or older if they have a disability. They could be younger, though, Reed, if they're caring for the deceased child of the worker. So if there's a child who's under the age of 16 or a disabled child, then that surviving parent may qualify for benefits. And in order for a surviving parent to qualify for benefits, there is a work limit or an earnings test. So if that surviving parent is working full-time, they may not be eligible. To kind of get a feel for what they could be earning and still qualify, the limit this year is $24,480. So if they're working and making more than that, then they may not qualify. We would start looking at how much more they're making, and some money would have to be paid back. But if they're not working, then they would be eligible for that survivor benefit. Or if they're under that $24,480 limit, they would be eligible for that survivor benefit. A divorced spouse could potentially qualify as well. In order for that to happen, they would have had to have been married to the deceased worker for at least 10 years prior to the divorce. And if they're remarried, they would have to have gotten remarried after the age of 60. So that's kind of a key piece there for a divorced spouse. But let's shift gears a little bit and talk about children. So children can qualify if they're unmarried and they are either under the age of 18 or under the age of 19 if still a full-time high school student. Now, older children can sometimes qualify as well, Reed, if they are disabled. So if they became disabled prior to the age of 22, have not married, and have not been able to work substantially on their own, then they could potentially qualify for that survivor benefit on their deceased parent record. So there are, significant benefits to applying for this. You just need to make sure you're aware of it. And if you're dealing with the loss of a loved one, make sure you consider whether or not you should be applying for these survivor benefits with us here at Social Security.
Yeah, a quick question about that. So you mentioned the criteria for children to get involved. You mentioned unmarried child of the person who died who is younger than age 18. So if they're, say, 17, can they apply, and would they get benefits like until they turn 18 or older if any of those other situations comes into play?
Absolutely. Yeah. So they would get that benefit up until the age of 18, but if they're still a full-time high school student, that benefit could continue until age 19 or as long as they're in high school. And then, of course, if they're disabled, we would have to make a medical determination of eligibility. but that could continue indefinitely as long as they meet the criteria for disability, as long as that disability began prior to attainment of age 22.
Okay, so circumstances there for children as well. What about parents who are dependent on a child of theirs, and that child, that older child, has died? Are they eligible for anything?
Yeah, this is a little bit more of an obscure type of survivor benefit. I mentioned that spouses and children are the most common, but there is a payment out there for, or a possibility, I should say, of a payment for a dependent parent. So, again, it's not a super common situation, but if you have a parent who is 62 or older and they were dependent upon their child, so the child in this circumstance was, an adult child, that would be, was supporting, or at least providing at least one half financial support for their parent, and then that worker passes away, that parent could potentially qualify. Again, not a super common scenario, but it is something that is possible. And if your adult child is working and providing at least one half financial support for you, and they pass away, you could qualify for some Social Security benefit on their record.
Okay, so some different circumstances there. And then it sounds like you folks in certain circumstances offer a one-time lump sum death payment. Talk about that and how that works and what that's like.
Yeah, so up until now, the benefits I've been describing would be monthly survivor benefits, and the amount of that benefit would be tied directly to the deceased worker's earnings history. So the more they worked and earned, the more that survivor benefit would be. But there's another type of benefit that's just a one-time payment. Admittedly, it's not very high. It is a $255 one-time lump sum death benefit, and this can be paid to the surviving spouse if they were living with the deceased at the time of death, or if they were living apart from the deceased at the time of death, but are eligible for certain Social Security benefits on their record. We consider them to have been living together if the only reason they were apart was for medical purposes. So when I say living apart, I'm referring more to like a legal separation of some sort. So in most cases, legal separation, you wouldn't qualify for that lump sum death payment, but you would if you were eligible for like a mother's benefit or another type of benefit like that on the record. Question we get a lot of times though is, what about adult children? Let's say the second parent passes away, so there is no surviving parent, and so that adult child will say, hey, is this something that I need to apply for? And the answer to that is no. It would not be payable to an adult child. The only type of child that could get that lump sum death benefit would be a child who's eligible for monthly benefits. So whether it's a minor child or a disabled adult child, if they're eligible for a monthly benefit on the deceased record, then they would be a candidate for that lump sum death benefit, and it would be payable to them if there wasn't a surviving spouse. But if there's no surviving spouse and there are no minor children, then that lump sum death benefit wouldn't be payable. And, I think that that's sometimes more of a peace of mind thing, because it's not so much that that adult child is really, starving to get that one-time $255 payment, but, you feel kind of an obligation to get everything that your parent had earned and paid into for. So that question comes up a lot, and more times than not, people are just kind of relieved to hear, okay, I'm not eligible for it. That's one less thing I have to worry about, and kind of move on with their, all their other affairs that they're trying to take care of.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to the importance of knowing about this and knowing what it is you can get. So we talked about the monthly payments, the one time lump sum death payment. How does one apply for these payments?
Yeah, so you can apply for survivor benefits. Mostly for monthly survivor benefits, you're going to have an appointment with us. So you give us a call at 800-772-1213. We can schedule an appointment to take that application for monthly survivor benefits. But if you're looking to just apply for the one-time lump sum death benefit, you can do that through our website. So go to ssa.gov/apply, and that one-time lump sum death benefit application can be completely submitted online. So, if you're a surviving spouse who's not yet 60, or perhaps you're still working and you're not going to qualify for monthly benefits, you can go ahead and do that lump sum death benefit application right there on the website. Again, ssa.gov/apply. But if you think you're going to qualify for monthly benefits, we're going to want to talk to you over the phone in a telephone appointment. So you could schedule that by calling us at 800-772-1213.
All right, so that's how to apply for those various benefits. I'm talking right now with Jack Myers, a public affairs specialist at the Social Security Administration. We're going to take a break, and we'll continue our conversation on the other side of the break right here on the WTIM Morning Show on your information station.
Your information station, WTIM.
Let's check the markets now on the RFD Radio Network. I'm Jim Taylor. Steady trade at this hour with corn, beans, and Chicago wheat. May corn up 4.55 3/4. July corn up 2 1/4, 4.64 1/4. December new crop 4.84 1/4, up 2 1/2. May beans up 3 1/2, 11.78. July beans up 3 3/4, 11.94. New crop November 11.69, up 2 1/2. May Chicago wheat down 3/4, 6.04 1/4. May KC wheat 6.44 1/4. Up 3/4. May bean meal, $3.2670, up $1.40. May bean oil, $73.14, up $1. Livestock trade, April feeders up 20 cents, $3.6677. April live cattle down 47 cents, $2.4695. May lean hogs up 2 pennies, $95.42. Energy market, June Brent crude oil up $1.97, $100.45. RFD.
Tornado baseball and softball, plus playoff games are on New Country 104.1 this spring. Tune in or listen to the live audio stream of select baseball and softball games, plus playoffs of both teams. Brought to you by
the Taylorville Community Credit Union, the Christian County YMCA, Rural Rentals, and Scooters Coffee.
The purple and gold are coming your way. The Taylorville Tornadoes are going to do it today.
Of the 2024 construction projects by Christian County businesses, those businesses saved an estimated $370,000 in sales tax by utilizing the county's enterprise zone. Through the efforts of the Christian County Economic Development Corporation over the past 20-plus years to establish and grow the county's enterprise zone, new and existing businesses in the county can save significantly in sales taxes. Find out how they can help your business by clicking their icon at TaylorvilleDailyNews.com. The Christian County Economic Development Corporation is moving Christian County forward.
Can't stop yawning? You need to call the Yawn Exterminators at Just Beds. Celebrate Just Beds' 30th anniversary sale going on now. Save big on all Bemco mattresses, plus take an extra 10% off already reduced prices on Spring Air, Max Life, and Arctic Breeze. And here's the dream deal. Get a free adjustable base with all Copper Series mattresses. Better sleep is closer than you think, with free delivery, setup, and removal. Stop in Just Beds today and sleep like you mean it.
Just Beds.
Here are the contest rules for our stations. We allow one person per household to win any prize from the radio stations in a 30-day period. Unless otherwise stated, all prizes to Christian County winners are to be picked up within 2 weeks at the studios at 918 East Park in Taylorville. Our office hours are 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. weekdays. Winners outside of Christian County will have their prize mailed. Any cash prize is mailed within 30 days of winning. Only if cash winners call our business line within 2 weeks of their name being drawn to provide their mailing address. Employees and their families of regional radio are not eligible to participate or win any contest.
Your information station, WTIM.
Welcome back to the WTIM Morning Show on your information station. The show is sponsored by People's Bank and Trust, where they put people first in Landmark of Taylorville. I'm your host, Reed Kamai, and I continue my conversation with Jack Myers, a public affairs specialist at the Social Security Administration. And we spent the first segment talking about Social Security survivors' benefits. Now, there is a bit of a change going on with regards to medical continuing disability reviews, or CDRs. And Jack, I'd love for you to fill us in on what that change is and what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely, Reed. This is something that was just announced recently, and I think it's really good news. And so I'll kind of start by describing what a medical continuing disability review is. So basically, these are regular reviews that we have to conduct to determine if people who are receiving disability benefits are still eligible. They're part of our ongoing efforts supported by Congress to ensure program integrity and reduce improper payments. So, basically, when a person gets approved for disability benefits, uh, at the time that they're approved, a likelihood of improvement is established by the state disability determination service or the administrative law judge that approves the benefits. And then we have to use that as a guideline, generally speaking, for how frequently we're going to review the case. So it might be a year, it might be 3 years, it might be 7 years, it just kind of depends. But that's a regular process, and we initiate that. So that's not something that you as a recipient have to initiate. But what used to happen with those is those reviews, we get the paperwork all together, and then we would send them over to the state disability determination service to conduct the review. And then they have to go through and get medical records and just kind of make sure that you still qualify for the medical disability benefits. Well, those disability determination services are the same state agencies that we use to make initial decisions for disability claims to determine if you're eligible. They also decide the first appeal, which is the reconsideration. So their time and resources have traditionally been split between doing the continuing disability reviews and the initial decisions and the reconsideration decisions. But what we're doing now, or what we're going to be doing in the near future, is we're taking those continuing disability reviews from the disability determination services and moving them to our federal disability case review site. So that's going to be more in-house, and we're going to leave the disability determination services to doing the initial and the reconsideration decisions. So what that means is they should be able to devote more of their time and energy to initial decisions and reconsideration decisions, which should lead to an improvement in the amount of time it takes for disability applicants to get a decision from us.
Yeah, and it sounds like it, right? Because if you're having to go from the state agency and they look at it and they say like, okay, you can get the benefit, then they have to like take the step of informing Social Security, and you've got that extra step and all the overhead that it comes with, and instead it sounds like it's all kind of under the same agency. So it seems like it checks
Yeah.
out that it would make things more efficient. Did you have something else to say?
Well, yeah, no, I was just going to kind of focus in on the fact that the resources, because with government, it's always about resources. It's about the time. It's about the staff you have to handle the work that you have, and there never seems to be any shortage of the work. So now state DDSs, or disability determination services, instead of having to have some of their time devoted to processing these reviews, they can devote all of their time to processing initial claims and reconsiderations, which are appeals of initial claim decisions, which should help to further drive down the backlog. And in June of 2024, our DDS initial claim backlog in the country was over 1.26 million. By February of this year, it had been reduced by more than 33%, down to 831,000 claims. And we believe this transition of medical CDRs away from DDS will only continue to drive that backlog now down further, which should lead to faster decisions for the public.
Right. So yeah. So you've got that, and it seems like there will be some progress there. And then with about a minute to go, in terms of those non-medical CDRs, I understand that is that something that you folks always handled?
Yeah, so there are a couple of types of CDRs, continuing disability reviews. There's the medical that we've been talking about, where the DDS, or now the the federal disability case review, look at the medical side.
Yeah.
But we also have to do work reviews, where if you go back to work, either a field office or one of our processing centers has to review your work activity for a non-medical
Got it.
review. So those have been in-house at SSA, and they will continue to be. And then the medical will be in-house through our federal disability case review site.
Yeah.
So no change on the non-medical side.
All right, so all in one place. That is Jack Myers, Public Affairs Specialist with the Social Security Administration. Jack, thank you.
Thanks for having me, Reed.
The Big 870 WTIM Assumption Taylorville. 96.1 FM Taylorville. 107.5 FM Shelbyville. 107.9 FM Pena.